Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Kirby Day, so we're taking a look at the next issue of his Fourth World Saga from the early 70s. This is The Forever People, issue number 5, cover dated November 1971. Let's take a quick look at the text to find out what's in store in this issue. To oppose the power of evil gods, Mother Box finds the most incredible man on Earth, Sunny Sumo. Here's a character who was quickly introduced last issue, and we're going to get to know more this issue. Don't know how long he's going to stick around. I don't feel like he's one of those more memorable characters from the Fourth World Saga, so how long he plays into the action in the series, I'm not quite sure, but he's definitely somewhat the focus of this issue here. For the first time, see the anti-life equation in action, and Extra the Sandman meets the Evil Carnival Gang. This is a reprint of some Jack Kirby, Joe Simon stuff from DC in the Golden Age, late 30s, I'm guessing early 40s probably for that one. They added those extra reprint pages once they bumped up the comics to 25 cents. More pages, but just reprinted material. But there is an extra few page story at the end of this book that does relate to the Fourth World Saga directly, so I'll talk about that when I get to it. I reviewed some of these past Golden Age stories real quick in past reviews, so this one here will be kind of the same. I'll just kind of leaf through it really quickly since it's not the focus of the review. I will say I do think it's not credited on the cover, and I don't know for sure, but I do feel like this is the first piece of Jack Kirby art that we're being shown that is inked by Mike Royer and not by Vince Colletta, who's been inking the stuff up to this point. And the next issue we're going to be looking at, New Gods number 5, is fully inked by Mike Royer. So I feel like in the schedule, he just kind of showed up here. Probably the pages were already drawn and sent off to Vince Colletta to be inked. So the inside of the comic is inked by Vince Colletta. The last issue that he's going to ink, and this cover here, again, not credited, but I 100% feel like this is Mike Royer. If I'm wrong, please let me know. But I already see aesthetically the differences between his and Coletta's inking, which, again, I'll give examples as I go through the book. I feel like Coletta's inking was keeping us kind of in the 60s and 70s. When Royer comes on, there's a much more kind of futuristic vibe and sci-fi vibe that comes through in the Jack Kirby stuff that I prefer. That I as along with a lot of Kirby fans, think that Mike Royer is probably the best Kirby inker and the most true to his pencils, I guess is how we'd put it. So pretty good example of that here. He's very true to the angular lines and the squiggly lines that Kirby throws in there. So really looking forward to New Gods number 5 as well, which is a great issue. And again, the art just steps up a notch as opposed to what we're going to see in this issue, where there's some good stuff, definitely. But, you can see where Coletta's maybe not putting in as much effort in some panels as he is in other panels and other pages. Pretty cool cover. I'm not sure if this white contour here is a Kirby thing, a Mike Royer thing, or if just a production thing that was added in later to kind of have Sunny Sumo pop. Not that it's wrong or anything, it's just something I don't see a lot of in Jack Kirby's art, so I feel like it was probably added in after. And again, don't know if that's by Mike Royer or by the production team, but anyways, enough about that. Let's have a look inside. Pretty cool cover overall, though, and again, giving the spotlight to Sunny Sumo. And I really like this double monochrome kind of deal where you've got the bluish hues in the front here in the foreground. Sunny Sumo's almost monochrome, but still, has different color, different colors involved in his costume, the green and Mother Box in red. And then the Forever People behind him with those yellow hues. Again, I really like the colors on a lot of these Fourth World 70s covers. There's just something about them that's just very evocative of the 70s I mentioned before, and that I really like. All right, so here we go with Sunny Sumo. Right away, you can see the inks are a little bit softer, a little more old school, right? Not that there's anything wrong or bad with this per se. It's just not in line with, I think, what Kirby's trying to get across with the Fourth World Saga and the kind of more, sci-fi bent that it has, kind of more cosmic and, future thinking, I guess, or looking towards the future. Forward thinking is what I'm trying to say here. And he's doing the old deal where he started doing this in the early 70s. He's going to continue it in Commandian stuff and use it not as consistently, not every issue, but he's using it quite often, the splash and then the double splash. And, if Coletta's inking this one, I'll give him props on that because he's really doing a great job on this one. Maybe a bit softer on the inks on the Sunny Sumo character and the Mafia guys and the movie guys in the background. But all the tech here and this giant robot here definitely feels very true to what Kirby probably laid down in the pencils, and somewhat, again, more in line with that futuristic kind of bent of most of Kirby's 70s comics. Just a great splash page and a great design on this robot character that, of course, is only going to appear in this issue. I've talked a lot about, with Kirby, not all his designs hit, right? But sometimes just throwaway characters have really great designs, and it kind of sucks that the character doesn't come back just because of how cool they look. I still feel there's a production issue here with the double page splashes in the 70s. They haven't quite figured this out yet. Past issues in the Fourth World Saga have had the same thing where it's like there's just a bit missing here. They weren't able to print full bleed back then, or at least at this point or something. So I think that's why we're getting just that little bit of border in the middle. Not that it's the end of the world. It almost ends up being 2 splash pages, right? But yeah, I can't wait for them to solve that. And later on, you'll get full kind of Kirby double page splashes. If not in the Fourth World stuff, maybe in the DC stuff, or maybe in the Marvel stuff a little later on. Not quite sure exactly where they kind of solved that issue. Something else I noticed in this one, I don't know if it's just because he's, blasting through these issues and drawn really fast, but there's kind of, I don't want to say an overuse, but a big, a majority of these pages have this kind of 4-panel design throughout this issue, as you'll see as we go through it. But they always work really well. They tend to be pages where there's a lot of action going on, and Kirby is smart enough to vary the size of the characters from panel to panel, and the angle and the dynamics of it always usually work pretty well. As tame as the actual layout is, the action within is not at all, and always very dynamic. Splash page to bring us back into the specific story of the Forever People. If you remember last issue, they're trapped in some sort of kind of carnival or theme park, right? Amusement park. And part of the displays being tortured, basically. And, the people who are visiting the park are seeing different images than what of the characters and what's happening to them than what is actually happening. And all of that being manipulated by Darkseid and his minion de Sade, who, if you don't know, is based on the Marquis de Sade, who is a figure who wrote a lot about originally sadomasochistic tendencies in, I think, the 17th, 18th century. Anyways, look him up. Interesting figure if you're into that kind of stuff, I guess. But that definitely is where the inspiration's coming from. And I've mentioned before, I've always liked his design, the design of his face, and that little bit of greasy hair coming down his forehead, I think, is really good. He looks like an unsavory character, right? And these visual representations of the torture here are really cool. This kind of collage of all their faces, really good creative visual interpretations from Jack Kirby. Even this stuff here, right? Just kind of such a surrealistic way to represent their torment. The green color, I think, works really well here. Just some creepy, kind of scary stuff there. Back to Sonny Sumo, who's confronting this robot. Again, this is a page where I feel like the inking kind of starts to, Coletta almost seems to fall back on some of the stuff he was doing on Thor, and the inking is just not quite as interesting as before. The face is less angular, a little bit more rounded off. Again, starts to look more like mid-60s Marvel than early 70s DC Kirby. So this sequence is interesting, tells us a little bit about Sonny Sumo. So he's, beaten half to death, really kind of broken up and scarred, and he uses, as it says here, ancient centuries and even more ancient practices come alive. So I feel like there's a bit of a Asian inspiration behind the Asian culture and their methods that in 1971 are probably still very mysterious to a certain extent to American audiences, right? So that's kind of what he's playing on there, and all of a sudden he comes back pretty much all healed up and gets the better of the robot here. I really like this shot here, the robot really close up to us, into the foreground, right? And Sonny Sumo really far in the back. I think, the distance that's covered is evoked really well. And it's almost the kind of image where I wish, you almost had maybe something Eric Larson would do where the character would pop out of the border here and create a bit of layering, but it's not something that was done a lot back then. And I don't think Kirby ever did much of until maybe in the 80s or something on Hunger Dogs. I'd have to look that up, but I don't think it's ever something he did much of, even though there are examples of him doing it during the Golden Age. So that's kind of interesting. Even, having this foot kind of pop out here would have been cool to have that extra layer of foreshortening. So the robot is defeated. Sonny gets back to his quarters, and basically, you know, that healing process only worked for a bit, and his wounds are back and he's tired. And this mother box that he discovered last issue, doesn't know quite what it is, starts pinging, as is kind of the typical sound of mother box, or the visual representation of the sound. And boom, some kind of magic happens, and Sunny Sumo is all healed up here. So he starts kind of listening in to what mother box is telling him, and starts finding a bit more about what she's all about. You sought me out, zeroed in on my mind, and now you need my services, a mission worthy of a samurai. So Mother Box is basically recruiting Sunny Sumo to come and help the Forever People. And boom, he's transported here by Mother Box, kind of like with the boom tubes, right, that we see a lot of. So he's transported to, I think it was called Funland or something like that. Anyways, the amusement park that the Forever People are stuck in, basically in the display. So an example here, you know, the people going through the amusement park see a skeleton kind of caught in this glass casing, right? But Sunny Sumo knows that that's not exactly what it is, breaks the casing, and Mark Moonrider, who's being tortured in there, is revealed. And of course, basically what Sunny Sumo is going to do is go through all the displays here and save everyone in the nick of time. So here we've got Shoot the Robot Bear, and you know, the attendees, not knowing that's a real person behind there, are more than willing to shoot. But Sunny Sumo is there just in the nick of time to save him and pull him out of danger's way. And these are more examples. As I said, I don't know if because there's a lot of action in this issue, but Kirby is just kind of, you know, falling back on that 4-panel layout here, very much so, pretty much throughout the whole issue. I'm going to assume that's probably because it's something he favored for the action sequences like we see here. Great shot of Desaad here, finally with his hood off, and we realize that, you know, I always kind of assumed that Desaad had a full head of hair, but no, it's just a little bit of his, whatever you call that when you're balding, the crown hairs kind of just down on his forehead. There we go. Now we can actually see what Desaad really looks like. So he's almost got like a reverse baldness pattern, right? Usually, you know, men who go bald keep the crown and all this kind of disappears, but he's really only got the top left. This again is a representation of, we've got the Dreamer. Is it Magical Dreamer? I think that's her name. Anyways, well, I'll call her Dreamer, right? She's kind of locked in here, and what the passerbys see is she's a sleeping princess, kind of like Snow White, and they say, wake the sleeping princess, say the magic word, win $1,000. And then we get the representation of what she's seeing with her mind being manipulated with these, you know, attendees just looking like crazy demonic monsters to her. And just even on this one panel here, just look at how many kind of weird and quite different designs Jack Kirby's introducing. Each monster looks vastly different from the next, and all kind of typical Kirby designs, but just again, the sheer variety of it, it just always amazes me. And you get one last shot here, Mark Moonrider actually looking quite demonic to Beautiful Dreamer is her name. And they're finally waking her up with the help of Mother Box here. So again, lots of just layout wise, maybe, you know, because he knows there's so much going on, doesn't really want to have to think about it too much. So let's keep it simple with these kind of layouts, which, you know, each panel is big enough to kind of allow lots of stuff, lots of layering within the image, right? It's, you know, I don't want to quite call it a splash panel, but definitely as opposed to the regular 6-panel grid, you're getting more bang for your buck per panel here. And basically the whole issue is just, you know, Sunny Sumo rescuing the Forever People and each subsequent member joining them to save the next. So Vulcan here is saved. And there was something about this panel that I really liked, kind of reminiscent of some of the stuff we saw in Mr. Miracle, but just this point of view and this angle of him jumping down from where he was imprisoned, I think looks really good. Of course, we got the minions here, all have the same costume. And we got a shot here of Sunny Sumo using Mother Box to put them all to sleep, is what he kind of evokes here. Again, this is one of those shots I feel like a better inker, not that this doesn't work, but a better inker would have made it more kind of systematically Kirby crackly, if I can put it that way. And these kind of panels by Kirby, I always feel, once again, kind of let down when an inker doesn't exactly know how to interpret it. And Vince Colletta, again, not the best at this kind of stuff when it comes to energy and powerful emanations that Jack Kirby is so good at visualizing. And boom, we get a shot of all the minions falling asleep here. We get a nice 2-page ad here cutting into the story. And then we get one of these kind of, I almost call them like, you know, Sears group shots or something that Kirby does every once in a while. And the inking again, while not bad at all, again, just to me evokes more kind of the past, where next issue, when we go into New Gods number 5 and Mike Royer inking it, we're going to be moving right into the future. And of course, you know, always fun to see Darkseid, even just for a few panels. That's the thing with Darkseid in these comics. He always seems to be just kind of in the background and only there for little bits of the story, right? Kind of the C plot almost, and the D plot rather than the A plot, but always kind of in the background manipulating events in a search for, again, the anti-life equation. He says it here, right? I want the anti-life equation. So that is it for this issue of The Forever People. So again, we get a reprint of Manhunter, I believe. No, this is Sandman and Sandy. And I will just talk about, I really like the designs here, because even though it's got that golden age kind of aesthetic on top, I definitely can see, you know, Jack Kirby's basic building blocks of characters and his character designs and stuff. So I find those very interesting. Midge the Mite is hilarious, right? Because he's a midget or a small person, whatever you want to say to be politically correct there. I'm just reading off this. Presto the Magician. This was kind of a trope back in the 30s and 40s, right? The magician type character usually has a top hat and a mustache, so not quite original, but something that was around back then. Stretcho the India Rubber Man. The fact that he's long and skinny, like kind of obvious, but there's just something about it that I think works really well and looks cool. So again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this stuff here, as we have reviewed a few of these in past reviews and past issues. What I was talking about, you know, elements popping out of the frame, you know, it's not like Jack Kirby wasn't doing it at some point. You've got the foot coming out of here, and the trope from the late 30s, early 40s, the circular panels, which don't get used that much through the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and which he'll actually bring back in the 80s a little bit in the Hunger Dogs book. But yeah, just some stuff that he let go of for quite a few decades and eventually brought back. Still got, you know, early signs of that typical Jack Kirby architecture, slightly futuristic looking. I think it's cool. These are definitely fun to see where kind of Jack Kirby started off and where he ended up, right? And then boom, the other interesting story here, the Young Gods of Supertown introducing Loner, or Lonar, but I guess it's meant to be, you know, Jack Kirby often, you know, has wordplay and puns and stuff in the names of characters. So I think it's supposed to be he's a loner, right? But there's just a slight letter change in there just to make it a little bit different. Maybe also that helps to copyright it, right? I don't think you can copyright loner, the word Loner, but Lonar, you definitely can. And what we're seeing here are the vestiges of the first issue of the New Gods, right? The Ragnarok, right? The final battle of the gods, right? And what's interesting here, Jack Kirby often mentioned that to him, you know, there's no distinction with his characters and his creations between Marvel, DC, and any other company he created characters for. For him, it was all part of one world, or part of, you know, for, let's call it the Kirbyverse, right? So this loner character is kind of going through the vestiges of Ragnarok. And if you know anything about that, really, Ragnarok was going to be part of the Thor book at Marvel, and eventually Ragnarok would happen and New Gods would be published by Marvel, but it didn't end up happening there. So Jack Kirby just kind of didn't end up doing that story in Thor at Marvel, but did it real quick as an introduction in the first issue of the New Gods as kind of a starting off point for those characters. So technically the old gods are Thor and the Norse gods, or whatever mythological gods Kirby was, you know, using at Marvel, Hercules, all these other characters, right? And here, after Ragnarok, we get the New Gods, and now we've got Loner kind of going through, again, the vestiges, the leftovers of that great war and Ragnarok. And what's interesting is when you see this helmet here, you know, if you don't think it, I'm pretty sure I know that Jack Kirby here is trying to evoke Thor in his helmet there, almost 100%. I can't see that being anything else. He designed it just slightly differently, almost like the wings could have petrified or something, but that to me is definitely Thor's helmet. And again, just a quick sequence, I guess, maybe for him, you know, in his own way to kind of create a link between that Marvel stuff and Ragnarok and the New Gods without being too obvious about it. And also skirting and being careful with copyright issues. So basically, Mother Box has revealed something here. He says some sort of shock could have induced natural case of suspended animation. So what he finds is, this kind of godlike mythical horse. As he says, it's a battle horse. I've seen statues of them. And Lonar is able to actually get on his back and run off. And again, just cluing us in a little bit in just a few pages, a quick 4-page story about background elements of the new gods and their world. And here we see Supertown, or is it Supertown? No, excuse me, New Genesis. Wow, New Genesis is the planet, right? So I assume this floating city is Supertown. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But there you go, tying it into the New Gods saga. And there you go, guys. That is it for today's review of Forever People issue number 5. If you're still watching and you are subscribed, thank you so much. I do appreciate your support. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you. Really helps the channel out, helps us grow, and helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. So everyone, again, thanks for watching and have an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13. 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.
Like! Subscribe! Like! Subscribe!